graduated from university or higher education, and yet because of her age, they've only been in the workplace for around about 2 years. So you can inadvertently discriminate against people without particularly realizing it. So what are some of the top tips for recruitment? HS Direct, like every company in particular, over the last kind of 18 months, has seen some real challenges with recruitment, especially in skilled roles, consultant roles, etc., where we've seen a rapid increase in the going wages and things like that, and we've had to look at what we can do to attract and retain good talent. Word of mouth and recommendations is often one of the best ways. That's certainly something we've done over the years here at HS Direct, and in fact we have a recommendation scheme in place for our employees, which almost reflects what we'd look to pay a recruitment agency to find someone as well, because we know that if it's a trusted employee recommending someone, then there's a better chance that that person is going to be a better fit for our business and our culture than someone that comes through a third-party agency or through an advertisement on the job boards. Don't just advertise pay. What else does your business offer? What sort of culture does it offer? Have you looked at additional benefits that you can offer, which may actually cost the business less than increasing salary, but the benefit to employees has a greater value to them? That could be things like cash plan. It could be things like increased holiday, flexible working in today's environment, and things like that. What can you show your candidates that you offer as a business, which is something that's going to attract them? Recruit for attitude and values, train for skill. Absolutely. So you can train people to develop skills. You can do that in-house through external training, etc. But it's a lot more difficult to actually build the right attitude and values in someone who doesn't have them already, even though they may have the other skills that you require for the job. So finding someone who's a fit for your business in terms of their values and attitude is going to be better than someone who's just got the basic skills and qualifications. Don't limit your advertising, be creative, use social media, job boards, look at the type of people that you might be looking to attract in terms of profile, etc. Where are they likely to be looking for jobs? Are they going to be using social media, or are they not? If you're looking at people who might be looking at a transition in later life into a different career, then you may have to look at more traditional ways of advertising, which has often been forgotten through things like newspapers, etc. It could be that there's some good people out there that you're just not getting your message out there to that you're looking for. Provide up-to-date employment documentation promptly. We know that candidates who have got options, etc., if they've accepted a job offer, they're going to expect to receive a job offer letter setting out the basic terms and preferably a full contract sooner rather than later, so that they can make sure that everything's as they expect it to be, and that they feel they've got some certainty. Because if they haven't got that, then there's nothing to stop them potentially looking for an alternative opportunity, and you might have wasted all that time and effort on interviewing and recruiting someone, but then for that to fall through because you haven't then got a contract out to them in good time for them to review and sign off. And target those actively looking for work. Keep an eye on the local press, etc. Unfortunately, nationally, we are seeing an increased number of businesses going insolvent. I think it was the last figure I saw last week was a 43% increase in the number of limited companies who are filing for insolvency at Companies House. Now, it might feel like it's a bit like ambulance chasing, but if you've seen a local business in the news has gone under and they might have people that work for you, then what can you do to reach out to them? Again, it might be via social media. You might find some good people for your business, and at the same time, you might be in a position to offer an opportunity to someone who suddenly and unexpectedly lost their job. Once you've advertised, then you're going to be looking at your interview. and what can you bring out of that. Interviews are notoriously one of the least reliable ways of identifying a good candidate for your job. A lot of people will perform very well in interviews, irrespective of their experience, skills, attitudes, etc. Other people really struggle, so you should look at the wider picture always. Look at the background, look at their experience. How long have they stayed in other roles? What references have you been able to attract from them? And also, therefore, it's important that interview is something that allows people to be themselves and express themselves. A conversation rather than interrogation. Given the opportunity to talk about themselves and the skills, based on questions on competencies. What are you looking for? You're looking for someone who's got analytical skills or good management skills, etc. Ask them about a situation where they've been able to demonstrate that. Situational based questions that they're likely to come across. How would you deal with an unhappy client? What would you do if you were under pressure to complete a job to an urgent deadline, etc. And be open-ended in your questions. Give people the opportunity to open up rather than just to give short answers or one or two lines. By asking them to talk about themselves, something interesting in their CV, etc. Try and get them engaged in that, because that will then lead on to more of a conversation where you'll get a better idea of that person's character, their values, and their attitudes. So once you've employed someone, you need to engage them and you want to retain them. As we've seen on the first slide, you want to avoid those substantial costs of having to go out and recruit again. So what do you do if you notice that there's some reduced productivity or slumping in morale, lethargy in the workplace? How can you solve that? Well, a simple answer to that is employee engagement. Now, that's something that's happening naturally anyway, especially within a small business. You'll have have a culture that's set from the top down. But often that's a big factor in the success of a business. But as businesses grow, as people change, etc., and sometimes you can lose that culture, and therefore employee engagement can suffer. So it's good to try and actually identify, well, what is it that makes this business a success, and what is it that the people who've been here and been a part of that success, what do they offer, but also what do they gain from that? Because we know that engaged employees are passionate, energetic, innovative and loyal, and can really help that business grow. So that's what engagement and retention is. It's aligning what you do as a business with the aims and interests of the individuals, and where that's in harmony, you're going to succeed. And retention is translating that into success within the business. So people want to stay and they want to grow with the business, which is growing. So why does it matter? Well, it's vital in all business sectors at a time where we know we've got record high levels of employment and therefore high competition in the workplace. Then this is something that individuals are looking for, and in particular, younger people within the workforce. We know already that although they need to meet a basic level of earnings, that they've got values that transcend that. It could be related to environmental or social values. It could be related to technology and innovation, etc. They want to be part of something new and different. So you've got to identify what it is that those people are going to want, so that you can engage them on that basis, and therefore you'll see that they'll go the extra mile for you. If you build a culture and show that it's important and involve people in doing that, then it'll make them feel more valued. And as a result of that, they're going to see enhanced job performance and productivity. People are going to be more likely to want to actually contribute ideas and more innovation to your business. You're going to see increased discretionary effort, people willing to stay behind to get a job done, to support a colleague, etc. You'll see your attendance rates improve, which means you avoid the significant costs of absences within the workplace, and therefore, and then the ultimate thing is that you're going to see better customer satisfaction, and retention, and recommendation of customers, so that your business is going to grow as the culture within the business grows as well. And it's more than just happiness and job satisfaction. People want to feel part of the success of a business. So it's actually, well, how does that translate into their personal involvement within that as well? And that's why certainly here, we want to share with our staff, where the business has been successful, what they contributed to it, but also areas where we've got room for improvement and how potentially they can help with that as well. Be open about where the business is and where it wants to go and what they can do to help that. So what do engaged employees want? And now, possibly more than ever, that wage packet at the end of the week or month is going to be particularly important to deal with rising costs. But at the same time, a lot of employees spend 5 days a week at work, 40 hours plus at work. There's got to be some value within that time as well as what the bottom line on the pay slip is. And so they want to make a difference and feel like they're making a difference. They want to feel that they're making use of their talents, and that's either it's them as an individual that's contributing to the business, and that they're not just a number or a robot. So they want to feel that sense of purpose, which means that you've got to ensure that there's engagement between senior management and management and the workforce. But you're looking actually to align your business goals with individual goals. If they want to develop as an individual, great. How does that align with how you want to grow the firm? Does it create new opportunities to develop your services, go into new markets or services, etc., because you've got someone who's particularly motivated or interested in that? Yes, they can get on with the job that they're employed to do, but actually, can they help you go somewhere else? And staff take a longer term view of their job. They're not just looking at the next kind of 3 or 6 months. And I think quite interestingly, you actually see that people are staying in jobs longer than they have done previously. Even though it seems a long time since we ever talked about jobs for life, although that might not be the case anymore in a lot of industries, and this might be a factor actually, is that people are actually looking for what certainty can they get for the current job, longer term job planning, etc. They're more likely to stay if they feel that it's a job that they're going to be happy in and that they can grow with as well. So what can you do to kind of help people see how their hard work contributes towards a company goal? Well, first of all, you've got to decide what that goal is. What is the target for the next 12 months? Is it a certain amount of growth? Is it meeting certain KPIs, customer satisfaction, etc.? What is it that you want to achieve as a business? And therefore, when that's broken down, how does that align with different job functions and different roles within your business? What can you talk to people about what they can do to contribute towards that overall goal, because that will get them engaged as well. They might not, if they're not involved in sales, be able to contribute to your overall revenue goal, but what is it that they can do to support that? Is it that they can support retention of existing clients by improving the service that you deliver? Is it that they can get referrals for your business because they're customer facing but not sales based, so they can get recommendations, etc., that can help to grow that? How does your back office function, those who aren't directly involved in sales and delivery, how can they contribute towards a business? How important is that to it, etc.? Your finance, your administration, etc. And eventually you'll break that down to everybody having a personal goal that directly contributes to that overall goal. And it's then that you're going to have that alignment between the business and the individuals. You're going to have the engagement. They're going to be working towards that common goal. They're going to be supporting to each other, and it's going to improve the likelihood that A, you reach that goal, and B, the people who are involved in doing that and who delivered and do that feel actually they've been a part of it and are more likely to stay with your business. Use people's talents. So if they've got particular skills that they have, make sure that they're making the best of that. That might be in a way, how they work, or finding some additional responsibilities, etc., that make use of that. If you can match people's abilities to the role they're employed to do, then that's going to result in a much better experience for everybody, and lead to more positive experience for the individuals, but also for you and for your customers as well. And that comes back to your recruitment as well. Recruit for those attitudes and values that fits with your business, fits your role, and then you can then develop those skills once they're in place. And make sure that working environment is positive. If people are going to spend 40 hours a week somewhere, they want it to be a positive experience. And therefore, you've got to ensure that you've got a good atmosphere within the workplace, that it's supportive, that it's open, people can be honest, etc. And that's going to help you get more out of people. That can be having things like an open door policy, so people know that they can go and speak to managers. It might not even need to be their direct line manager if they've got any concerns about everything, so that they can address those things and feel that their problems will be listened to and heard. Try and have regular team meetings, which are an opportunity for people to contribute ideas, to comment on how things are done, what can be done to improve that. And often it's a good idea to try and do that somewhere separate. Even if it might just be going out for a walk or going outside somewhere rather than just being sat around your normal desk space as well. And make sure that your communication's good. That's vital to a positive working environment. People need to be informed about what's going on, what's changing, what's different. Make sure that they've got the right tools and resources to do the best job. If they've got the skills and ability to do it, but they haven't got the technology or the hardware or whatever it might be, then it's going to be difficult for that to be positive, because you're going to get frustrated with how they're working, and you're going to lose that. But as well as looking at building engagement and values, you've got to get some of the basics right as well. So once you've made that job offer, make sure that you do your pre-employment checks properly and correctly according to the role that you're going to be doing. Especially if it's a physical role, then you should be getting a medical questionnaire out. Ideally, this should be done only after a job's been offered, to align with the requirements of the Equality Act, and to make sure that you're not inadvertently discriminating against people with health conditions, where it may just be that they just need some slight adjustments to do the role. And actually, when you receive that back, have a look at it before that person's first day in the job. Have they got some sort of ongoing health condition? Is there any little adjustment that you might be able to do to support them with that? That could be as simple as a reserved parking space for people with mobility issues closer to the office, or where they're desk based, through to making sure that they know what support is available to them in terms of their mental health and well-being, especially where they might disclose that they've got some ongoing mental health issues. That could be depression or anxiety, etc. Making them aware of what support is there from the outset can really help them settle in from day one. Make sure you're checking your proof of right to work, especially with us leaving the EU. Then almost all of international candidates are going to have to demonstrate that they've got a right to work in the UK. That could be under the settlement scheme, if they've been from the EU and lived in the UK for a long time. It could be a skilled worker visa. It could be one of the new postgraduate 2-year visas that are coming into place, and which have already got a high level of take up from international students, etc. So make sure you're doing those checks. If you employ someone illegally, even if that's inadvertently and with no ill intentions, if you can't demonstrate that you've attempted to check their right to work and satisfy that he's right, then you could be facing a £20,000 fine. Check the qualifications, especially if it's that's key to someone's job. Make sure that you take a copy of those, if it's degree certificates or trade qualifications, accreditations, etc. Making sure that you're taking those, inspecting them, and making sure they're valid. Take up references. especially if you know, someone's moved around a lot in work, etc., or been out of employment for some time, and reference is going to be a really good way of confirming your recruitment decision. And do you need to carry out DBS or basic criminal record checks? That may be because you need to, because it's a regulated activity, you're working in care or an education setting. It might be because you're expected to, because you're going into those sort of settings and you know that your clients are going to require that. Or you might decide actually it's something that's necessary because of the nature of the role that they're doing. Are they going to have access to clients' credit card details if they're working in sales? Are they in a financial position where they're going to have access to your bank account, etc.? Is it worth doing a basic check like that as part of your recruitment process? Make sure that you've got a robust induction and training program in place. Now, this doesn't have to be all singing and dancing. You know, for a small business, you know, there's only so much you can invest in that. But having a plan for that first week or 2 weeks, it's gonna make sure that people have a better experience of when they join the business. You're gonna have to cover off, you know, your basics, your health and safety, your first aid, your payroll, etc., your contracts, and so on. But also, you know, what do you do to explain about your business to new starters? You're going into the history of a business, how you've got to where you are today. Do people get an experience to meet people from other areas of the business and get an idea of how things fit together? Certainly here at HS Direct, within the first couple of weeks, we'd expect every new starter to spend, you know, half an hour with each of the different teams across the business, so that they're building relationships and now you can understand what everybody's doing, and it makes them feel a part of, you know, a bigger part of that business already, rather than just thinking, well, I've just got to come in and get my head down and get on with my job. Consider using a mentor system. That could be someone who's doing a similar job, or it could be someone who's doing something different. But buddying up a new member of staff with someone who's been there for a while, it's someone that they know they can talk to. It might just be a question about how the business works. When can I expect my pay slip, etc. How does that sort of work? Simple questions like that. But they know that they can go and ask, how do we do this? And so on. Team building, you know, bringing a new person into a business is a really good sign to get that team together and to do something as a team outside of their normal working process. You know, again, that could be something that's social. It could be a work lunch or after work thing, or it could be something a little bit more formal and structured as well, from a brainstorming session, or some sort of team building exercise as well. To inform your induction and training program, it's really good to actually then carry out exit interviews with employees who are exiting the business, because that's where you're going to be more likely to get some real honesty from people, both positive and negative. If they're moving on, you know, then they've got nothing to lose by being open about things. You know, you'd hope that they're not going to be major things, but there might again just be those little things that could make a difference, especially if they haven't been in the business long. Well, what could you have done better at the start of employment and during that training to increase the likelihood that they'd be there to stay? And make sure that you're training your line managers as well on that induction process, but also in terms of line management. Management is often a natural progression within a business, where someone who's good at a job, you know, is moved into a management role. But those skills that made them good at a job doesn't naturally mean that they're going to be able to step into management. They might have a potential to do that, but often they're going to need some support with doing that. So what sort of training can you provide for your line managers to support them with that, in terms of management skills, managing conflict, delivering training in a way which is engaging, you know, not just talking, what visual aids can we use, etc., what practical things can we do to help deliver that. And again, I think, you know, that start at the moment, if you've got a proper induction, if it's planned out, if someone comes in on the first day and they get a, even if it's just a one sheet of paper to say, right, this is what you're going to be doing over the next 5 days or the next 10 days, um, to incorporate them into the business, then they're 70% more likely to stay in a business for 3 or more years. And when you extrapolate that out with the cost of recruitment, then the savings to the business there significant, but also then the value to the business of that by retaining good members of staff is going to be really important as well. And then what can you do beyond that initial deduction process? Well, we recommend having one-to-one check-ins and a performance review process, and that's almost a two-way thing. That's reviewing the performance of a business as well as performance of individuals as well. What are the potential gaps in performance? Sitting down and talking about those where an employee might be struggling means that you can identify and address those at an early stage. Is it something to do with the tools and equipment that are available to them? Is it somewhere where they need some skills or a bit of a refresher session on a particular process, etc. Because if people feel like they're not performing and the managers feel like their staff aren't going to be performing, then your morale and your culture and your engagement is going to tail off quickly. And part of that is identifying your trading needs and what can you do to address that. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily investing lots of money in external training. It might be quick sessions, with other members of the team. If you're in an accounts and administration department, have you got someone who's a bit of an Excel expert who can, share some really handy tips which can really make people be able to do their jobs a lot more quicker and easily than doing things manually. It's also an opportunity to look to give more responsibility. Where are people doing well? Where have they got skills that you can utilize? Where do they want to take on more responsibility? Because again, them taking on responsibility is in aligning what they want to do and what they're able to do with what you achieve as a business. And again, you're going to see higher levels of employee engagement and therefore better results as well. And as I say, it's a two-way process. And allow employees to have a voice. Allow employees to have a voice about how the company is run. What do they feel could be done a little bit better, or what could change, etc. What have they heard from customers or colleagues, etc. What have they seen on the shop floor that could be improved, and to do that. And what systems do you have in place to record and monitor your check-ins? Again, it doesn't need to be complex. It could be putting in repeating diary entries in your calendar, say once every 3 months, on a Friday afternoon or a Monday morning, whatever. I'm going to have 10-15 minutes with that individual to check on with them. Once every 6 months, we're going to have a sit down and a bit more of a formal one-to-one where we're going to go through a bit of a form which focuses on them and their role to make sure that we're getting the best out of them. Now, inevitably, you're going to miss one or two of those. That's the nature of running a business. But at least if you've got there in the first instance, then you're not going to miss all of them, and you're not going to suddenly discover that actually a year or 18 months has gone past and that individual hasn't really had a sit down outside of a normal day-to-day to discuss about how things are going about them personally, what their development goals are, what their needs are, etc. I'm just going to talk about flexible working for a little bit, which is really becoming a hot topic in the workplace after the pandemic and with the challenges that businesses are having attracting and retaining talent. We've seen since the pandemic that large-scale home working in businesses that might never have considered it has now become the norm. Has it benefited your business, but also has it benefited your employees as well? And also, what do you need to do if you're going to get a flexible working request? And again, we've seen, an influx of those even within small business where you might not see them previously, because now people are saying, well, actually, I've been able to work at home successfully now. Why are you now demanding me back in the office? I'd like to work at home some or all of the time, of course. It's not necessarily an option for all types of roles and industries. If you're customer facing, if you're on the tools, etc., then unfortunately there's some things that can't be done from home. and one of the MPs, a guy called Matthew Wilburn, he's just been asked to conduct an additional review into the employment market and employment legislation, and he's come back with 4 recommendations. And his top recommendation is that we need to look at the flexible working regime within the UK to reflect the experiences over the past two or so years, and that's likely to see a widening of a right to be able to make a flexible working request, although it's unlikely that it's going to make it an obligation of businesses, because the government's always going to be loath to dictate exactly what working arrangements businesses should have in place with their staff. So what is flexible working? Well, quite simply, it's a pattern of work which differs from the one under which an employee is currently working. And really that's talking about the number of hours that they work, when they work those hours, and where they work from. And therefore flexible working requests often take the form of now in particular working from home all or part of the time, going from full-time to part-time hours. It could be compressing their hours, i.e. going from a 5-day working day to a 4-day working day, or a 9-day fortnight, but still working the same hours. It could be changing their work hours, for example, to fit around school runs, etc. Staggering as hours. It could be job sharing. It could be annualized hours to reflect what's happening at different times of year. That could be again around school, or it could be around industry and work needs as well. And it's important to look at whether or not this has benefited your business as well, and where people's working patterns have changed as a result of the pandemic, even if they haven't had a flexible working request. Actually, is that still the best way forward? And what can you look at? Is hybrid working going to be more appropriate? What is a balance that you need to strive? And much as the reason why home working wasn't as common before the pandemic is because businesses' employees were potentially resistant to change, and didn't feel that people not being in the office meant that they couldn't work successfully. We're now seeing the reverse of that, and people who've now got used to working at home because that's what they've done for the past 2 years are now resistant to coming back in the office, even though that could be, actually having a negative effect both on themselves but on the business as well. So in terms of the process of flexible working, what are the key considerations? Well, for it to be dealt with as a formal flexible working request, it needs to be in writing, it needs to be dated, and it needs to include certain information. That's basically to confirm that they want to make a flexible working request, that they haven't done so in the last 12 months, which is one of the limitations there in the second bullet point. They need to say what is the change that they want, but then they also need to then say how they think the business can accommodate that. How is the business going to deal with it if they work less hours, or they work from home, or if they don't want to work after 3 p.m. or something like that? How is the business going to be able to accommodate that? So it puts an onus on them to think about those things, rather than just saying, well, this is what I want to do, and therefore I want you to see whether or not you can do it. It's worth thinking about whether or not there's any exceptions. One of the main ones is agency workers, even if they're working for a long time, which isn't that unusual. They don't have a right to making a flexible working request as well, and they have to work for you for at least 26 weeks to have that statutory right to make a flexible working request. And if they don't, then you're not under a duty to consider it, although you may still decide to do so. So once you've received a request, then how do you need to manage that? Well, the simple answer is that you just need to deal with it fairly and reasonably. There used to be a bit more of a a strict process that needs to be followed. You need to have arranged an initial meeting within so many days. You need to confirm your decision in writing. You need to drop a right of appeal and have an appeal meeting, etc. Now that's been got rid of, and it just says that you need to deal with it in a reasonable manner. What we would suggest, therefore, is unless you're going to just accept it off the bat because you're happy to do so, then there should be a meeting to discuss that, to get into the minutiae of the little things. How can it be dealt with? Is there things that the employee hasn't considered that need to be looked at? Is there some sort of compromise that you feel you want to discuss with the business? And it's best doing that face to face. If you've received multiple requests that potentially have an impact on each other, then it's generally best to deal with them in the order that you receive them. But again, it comes down to dealing with them reasonably as well. So you've got to look at how they might impact each other and what are each individual circumstances as well. And really, the only thing to be aware of in terms of the process for responding is that you need to deal with the request within 3 months. So you need to have said yes, no, or what about this within 3 months of having received that. When it comes to refusing a request, there's no obligation to accept any request, and I wouldn't foresee that changing even if the law is reviewed. But if you do refuse a flexible working request, then you have to demonstrate that there's a genuine business case for doing so, and that it fits into one of what they call the fair reasons for refusal. And if you do reject a request, then really you should let them appeal that decision as well. Now, I think when you look through those 8 fair reasons for refusal, then it's unlikely that any genuine business reason that you have for doing so is going to fall outside of that, because it's talking about, well, is it going to result in additional cost? Is it going to affect your ability to actually, meet your customer demand? Are you not going to be able to reorganize work if someone wants to reduce their hours amongst your existing staff, or are you going to struggle to recruit additional staff, especially if somebody only wants to reduce their hours by a small number? It's going to be difficult to possibly get someone to just fill that gap. Are you going to see a detrimental impact on quality or performance within the workplace? If someone wants to work at new or different hours, well, actually, if you actually got work for them at that, especially again if it's a customer facing job, where you've got opening hours, where you're not expecting therefore to have customers being in touch outside of them. And then finally, have you got some planned structural changes within the business, which actually means that although you could accept it now, it's not going to be acceptable once you've implemented those changes in the future. Now, as we're seeing, one of the big drivers of flexible working requests is home working, in particular, after a lot of people started work from home under the pandemic. But it's important that you actually look at what that actually means for you as a business in terms of your general obligations, etc., but also the long-term impacts on your employees as well. So some of the practical considerations: what support do you have in place for employees who have a query such as IT, etc.? How are they going to deal with that if they're working, a few or quite a long way away? Have you got some way of raising that, and have you got some way of that being addressed by IT support? Have you performed a home working risk assessment? Again, if someone's working, even if they're from home, you're then going to have a health and safety obligation over that. Now, that's you might set out some clear expectations certainly when you recruit someone on a home working basis, that they've got to make sure that they've got a suitable space available, etc. But you want to be at least checking that then, once you've recruited them or once they started home working, that is the case. And therefore, we'd expect, most people working from home, it's going to be generally a desk-based, screen-based job, carrying out a remote display screen equipment test as a minimum. Have they got a big enough desk? Are they working from a proper screen rather than just a laptop? Have they got a mouse and a keyboard? Have they got a chair that's actually comfortable and suitable for them to be working on? to make sure that you're taking the same steps that you would with someone who's working within the office. Um, do you need to install some additional policies, especially when it comes to data security? Are there any steps that they'll need to take in respect to the Wi-Fi network and connection to ensure that your data is protected? Do you need to consider something like a VPN, a virtual private network, to make sure that your, confidential company information isn't more exposed to loss and hacking as a result of people working outside your business network? Um, and consider some engagement activities you can do virtually to stay in contact, regular team catch-ups on Teams, etc. Do you need to arrange a periodic, physical get-together between teams who generally work remotely, etc. That very much ties into some of the well-being considerations for home workers. Um, 49% of workers surveyed in the state of remote work. Now, this is pre-pandemic, but I think the results are still applicable. Saying that their struggle is wellness related. So yeah, there might be some really good benefits of working from home in terms of convenience, etc. But there's also a trade-off of that in terms of health and well-being, in terms of social contact, and various things like that. So what can you do to address that? 22% of people said they can't unplug after work. But what sort of mechanisms can you introduce to help them to do that? Making sure that they've got a daily shutdown process in place, shutting down the laptop, ticking off things on the to-do list, putting papers away, etc. Especially if their workspace is shared with their living space as well, and they can't just shut a spare room or an office door. And 19% of people said they felt lonely working from home. Well, what can you do to address that? Do you need to look at, actually, is hybrid working better for them? Even if it's only coming in, a day or two a month, but to have that physical and social experience with the colleagues. Etc. And what collaborative tools and platforms can you look to introduce which work for remote workers as well, so you get real-time exchange of information as well. We're not just talking about Zoom and Microsoft Teams, but that can be other productivity tools, things like Trello and Flock, etc. Which allows people to work collaboratively and remotely, in the same way that you might kind of sit down and make notes on a piece of paper in a face-to-face office. How can you do that remotely? How can you keep in touch with people regularly, etc. And employee well-being in general is for home workers and people working in the office, that's going to be key to your recruitment and retention. And that means addressing not just stresses and strains from inside work, but also outside of work as well. And it's quite easy to overlook those who might not make a song and dance about those struggles. We all know those people who, whenever you ask how they are, they always say fine. But is actually the case, and can you be more proactive about that to support them and to create a happy working environment and to ensure they're making a positive impact within your business. And so the HSE statistics from 2019 to 2020, 1.6 work-related ill health cases. So that's a significant percentage of the working population have had an ill health case, and that could be physical or mental, which is actually related to their work. And actually 51% of those were stress, anxiety or depression related, so related to an individual's well-being. And that led to nearly 20 million working days lost as a result. And when we think that the actual cost of a day's absence from the workplace is somewhere around about the £500 mark, then the cost to businesses is really significant there as well. So why does well-being in the workplace matter? Well, because if your well-being is not good, as we've seen on the previous slide, then that's going to lead to absences, which means that you're going to have a shortage within your workforce, which is therefore going to lead to more stress within both those people who are off, we're worried about being off, but also those people who are left picking up the slack whilst those people are off, and it becomes a bit of a vicious circle, which is then going to lead to burnout and again more absences, etc. It's going to affect morale in the workplace. And again, that's going to contribute to employee engagement and retention. What are the, COVID-19 has added additional pressure to that. With all the absences that's created from people needing to self-isolate as well. And also then potentially we're seeing the flip side of that, especially our individuals who have suffered financially from that because they've not been able to work, is now actually then they feel it's more important than ever to be present at work. That ties in with the cost of living crisis as well, is that you're going to see increased levels of presenteeism, which itself become an issue, because then again that means that people are working when they shouldn't be, and that might turn what only needed to be a 1-day absence into a 5-day absence because again they've worked through an illness or an injury or something, and then they've only gone and exacerbated it, and in the end the fallout of that is going to have a negative impact on your business and services, and damage the growth and profitability of your business. So what can you be to be more proactive about supporting well-being within the workplace? Well, we've just got a few ideas in here, and I've already talked about having an open door policy, making sure that staff know that they can go and speak to their managers about anything, be it a work-related or personal-related issue, to try and get some support of that, or even if it's just to share that and have someone to talk to. A problem shared is a problem had. Look at whether or not an employee assistance program is going to be of a benefit, and even at the most basic level, that can be something that's useful to individuals, because it means that they can pick up the phone and speak to someone who's had training, and often a trained counsellor at the end of the line, about any issue. It could be about health, it could be about debt, it could be about a legal matter, it could be about struggles in the work. And for those of you who are first employment clients with HS Direct, then the legal expenses insurance policy that we provide includes access to a basic employee assistance helpline as well. Encourage physical activity. Again, this ties in very much with people who are working from home as well, or those with a desk-based job. If you get up in the morning, especially in the winter months when it's dark at the start of the working day and the end of the working day, it might be that you move from your bed to the dining room for breakfast and straight to the office chair, and you've only done a few steps, and then the same for lunch, and then the same at the end of the day. What can you do to encourage physical activity? We've had within HS Direct walk and talk sessions, at the start of the working day, when people who were working from home might otherwise be commuting, getting them out and having a talk whilst they're logged into a Zoom meeting, and where someone's talking about something that's of interest to them. Again, it's just putting those sort of things in place, which people can gather around and do. Start a buddy system, so that people have someone in the workplace, and doesn't have to be a manager, that they can talk to and share concerns with. Check in with your staff to make sure that they are taking breaks, and that's particularly important with home working staff as well. Are they actually logging off for a lunch break? Are they getting up and moving away from the desk, going to get some food again? Are they getting out of the house? Asking people how they are. As I said on the slide previously, you'll have those people who won't be naturally open about issues that they might be having, and take the time to listen, and be observant. Are you actually seeing people whose demeanour, behaviours have changed? Are they not as engaged as they used to be? Well, then it might be indicative that there might be some sort of issue. So, take them away from the desk somewhere quiet and supportive, and give them time to open up about anything that they might be doing. There's some of our ideas in here as well. Regular breathers and reset and recharge. Okay, well, we've finished that project. Let's reset. Let's talk about what went well, what didn't do wrong, you know, let's get up and move away from the desk, walk around, etc., before you sit down and get on with the next task. Working together through difficult decisions, and say, you know, problem shared is a problem halved. And actually, for someone who feels really overwhelmed with something, which actually, when you break it down, isn't that bad, but they've got, you know, they can't see the wood for the trees. And again, working through those together and giving an alternative perspective can be really useful. Keeping staff informed, and that's particularly important at difficult times. For everybody, you know, this is what's happening, this is what we're trying to do to address it. You know, this is where we're having successes as well. This is why we're positive that things can get better, etc. And end of shift well-being checks in the same way that you do a visual check on your vehicles, etc. Have the tires got enough tread? Are the lights working, etc.? Is it going to be able to get a person home safely or to the work safely? Actually, is that individual, you know, at the end of a working day, you know, do they look and sound like, you know, actually well-being? You know, that's going to help drive safety. Are you identifying fatigue at an early stage, etc., and taking steps to address that? You know, in the end, it's up to businesses to make sure that their staff are fit and healthy and able to do the job. And therefore, if you observe things that are a potential issue, then you need to address that, work with them rather than let them fester, even if that means that that individual is then going to take responsibility for it. So yeah, just some ideas to boost well-being. Are you actively promoting the importance of well-being? Does it actually form part of your culture as a business? Is it something that you talk about, you know, when you have one-to-ones, etc., or do you just talk about the job and what people are doing? You know, it's very good to make sure that, you know, you've got well-being as being part of individual objectives, etc. As I say, do you have an employee assistance program in place, and also do employees know about it? You know, it's no good having these things in place, you know, unless they're able to use it. You know, another good option is health cash plans. And again, coming back to your recruitment, you know, that might be about offering a benefit which is worth more to individuals than what it actually costs you. You know, if you've got a scheme where people can reclaim the cost of dental checks or eye checks, or physiotherapy, etc., it means that they're more likely to actually go out and do those things, which can then, you know, help reduce absences for various reasons, etc., without actually increasing the cost of the business too much. And making sure, again, yeah, you've got regular communication in place, people up to date with the right ways of working, your policies and procedures. You know, are you communicating regularly with people who are working remotely from home because you haven't got face-to-face contact anymore? Are you having regular check-ins? Are you doing a newsletter or briefings, etc.? You know, what's your strategy to make sure that everybody's kept up to date with everything? You know, just want to mention briefly here that soon HS Direct will be in a position to offer something more than the basic EAP service to clients. We're currently working with Bupa to develop a service which is going to offer something more than just someone being able to pick up the phone and speak to someone, but actually something a bit more engaging and hands-on, you know, which can really help you boost well-being, but also address issues within the workplace. And where time's getting on, so I'm just going to move quite quickly through the next section on contracts and handbooks. If you're already a first employment client, then you know you'll have that support from us already and hopefully up to date. If you're not, and you've got some concerns over your current contracts and handbooks, then send those in. Then you know we're happy to review contracts free of charge and provide some precise feedback. But it's important to ensure that you know your contracts are compliant. Is it being written by someone who understands what the current law is? Is it up to date? Does it actually reflect your current working practices? Because if your contract says one thing but you actually do another thing, then potentially you're going to have to update your contract to make sure that you've got something to rely on. And is it going to stand up to scrutiny in the tribunal? And actually, you know, check on these sort of things in terms of your handbook. Have employees got an access to it? Have they signed for and acknowledged it? Why is it important to have? Well, it's important to share business critical information ways of working, expectations with staff. Again, it comes back to this idea of communication. Well, if you expect X from an individual, have you communicated it to it? Have they got access to it through your handbook, etc.? What should you include in your contracts? Well, it needs to be compliant with basic expectations, but then what also things do you need in there to help protect you as a business? Making sure that you've got notice periods which reflect the type of role and how long it's going to take to recruit and replace someone. Have you got non-solicitation agreements in there for people who are customer facing, etc.? Is it clear what your disciplinary rules and procedures are so that there are issues and employees know how you're going to stand with that? The law has changed slightly. It went under the radar back in 2020, but it's now a legal requirement that all employees and workers new to a business are issued with basic written particulars of employment on or before the first day of employment. And what we would always recommend is that is a full contract, so it actually includes the clauses which are going to protect you as a business as well. But again, that's going to improve your recruitment and retention process, because if people know what the holiday entitlements is, a notice period, the probation period, when they're going to get paid, etc., before they start work, then they're going to be a lot clearer on things, and they can really focus on doing a good job when they come in. So where does HS Direct come in? Well, as many of you will already know, we support yourselves and 8,000 other businesses across the country with their HR, employment law, and health and safety compliance. You've got access through our consultants to supporting documents and templates to support your business. And if there's anything from within here you feels useful you haven't got, then please reach out. One of the consultants will be happy to support you with that. We've got the software which makes it quick and easy to issue compliant contracts. And we've got our First for Holiday software to help you manage holidays, which can help you manage your resources effectively. Also helps people understand what they've got to use and to encourage them to use that in the right way. And we've got our First for Learning software solution as well. Again, continual professional development and refresher training is particularly important in recruiting and retaining staff. And we're here 363 days a year for you. Finally, I'd just like to introduce to you a company called UCheck. UCheck's the company that HS Direct have been using, certainly for as long as I've been employed here, which is over 10 years, to carry out our own DBS and criminal records check, in particular for those staff who are kind of handling credit card and financial information. And they've recently become part of the wider citation group that we're part of. And so if doing DBS checks is something you need to do or have considered doing, or you're worried about doing right to work checks properly, the new checks worth considering. They've got a really easy to use platform to give you quick rules, to give you quick results. As an HS Direct client, then you can have free registration with them, which is normally £49. And there's a code on there which will form part of a slide pack, and we'll share a bit of information out there as well. If you do want any more information about the service that they offer, then you can email sales@ucheck.co.uk. So thank you very much for your time today. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask those within the chat. I know we've covered quite a lot of ground today. We will share the slides out afterwards. And if you've got any questions about anything that we've covered today, then please do reach out to us. If you're not a current client of our HR services, then we can offer an initial